Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof For BJJ podcast. I am JT.
I'm Joey.
And we are talking about dealing with mat heroes or mat herodom, those who don't compete but fight to the death. Now, I think, there is a certain kind of person in any gym. You know them, you know who they are. They may have various names. And they absolutely roll to the death every single roll. And you might just be coming in, just trying to get your training in. Showing up was a victory in and of itself. But these people want to act like their life is on the line. And that's tough. And sometimes they're not always the injury machine, but sometimes they can bring that heat. And it's not always necessary. And we can all be guilty of this at times as well. It's not always just a given person. There is that person in the gym who is the mat hero, but then I think it is possible for, depending on the day, depending on the stress level, it could be you. It could be you, Joe Worthington.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of chasing heroism in traiing sometimes. Absolutely.
Chasing heroin? In class?
Yeah. Oh, shit, did I just say that? Shit.
Delete that.
Yeah, it's. I think it's there in all of us. I know as a
competitive human,
male. I know that it's with him. You know,
being a male,
this ego thing that is spoken about. I haven't dissolved it fully yet, but we're working on it. We're actually not. I got no issue with
having a bit of ego.
Yeah, I think it can be great at times. It can be a great hindrance too. But yeah, I think you do have that archetypal mat hero at a lot of gyms, where it's like what is happening in the training room right now is life and death. But then we also have this thing where it's like, fuck, I can slip into becoming a mat hero myself. And really the way I see it is like you kind of lose sight of the fact that
perspective.
We're just training in a sport, in a padded room, in a funny uniform.
It's quite contrived.
Yeah, it's extremely contrived. This is definitely not the street.
No.
Like this inversion that we're learning right now, this is not the street.
No.
Like, don't fucking do this on the street. It's agreed upon rules in this unique little cosmos that we all have created in the community of jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
And some places do it in a more realistic way than others, but arguably anyone that's hearing this, we're all doing the sport of jiu-jitsu, right? We are. So it's like it just, here's an example for people, maybe someone's listening, but what? Like, I've just, yesterday we're talking about this, using the lapel around like overhooking the leg. Yeah, tying around the leg and using that as a way to come up and take someone down.
Correct, yeah.
What we're talking about there is pulling guard.
Yes.
So that you can take someone down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was sit-up guard.
Yeah, which is like if we're talking about the streets, it's like you don't fucking pull guards so you can come. You take the person, you stay on top.
Yeah.
You put them on the concrete.
You don't want to be on the ground.
Yeah, but it's a great jiu-jitsu tactic, and you look at the world, it's like a lot of guys like from the bottom are coming up or even wrestling up that you're seeing in a lot of no-gi jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, of course.
So we're playing this game and so going back to my original point, and you're just like, I gotta fucking, it's everything, it's now, this is it. And you're like, no, it's just a roll.
Yes.
In this whole thing, and the person just pushed your button or whatever.
Yeah.
I know that I'm definitely being guilty of it at times. But I can also think of a couple of humans I've encountered over the years where it's like, that is them 24/7, 365. Like they're just, I'm fucking, and one of the hallmarks, and this is actually, I got to give a shout out to our man, Adam.
Yes.
Adam was, he kind of, he brought this topic to me. He was like, hey, you ever talk about mat heroes? And his point was, I met Adam recently. He's a user of the program. He's in the northern part of the state.
Okay.
I ran into him when I dropped into Jiu-Jitsu Academy up in Ballina. And he's like, I know you. I use your program. You guys are awesome. I love the show. Fucking,
awesome.
Nice so it's great to connect. But he was like, what about these people that train 1,000% and never compete?
Yeah.
And that was kind of his like thing of it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm guilty of training 1,000% at times and not necessarily being an active competitor.
Sure.
So yeah, worthwhile.
Yeah, and look, I think if you're on the receiving end, this is where, we've talked about it before. You can't always avoid these people. I guess what I'd say is you got to ante up. Like if you know that someone is going to bring that heat to you, you can't go in there and be like, hey man, I got a bad knee and you can't rationalize with someone in that way. Like you got to know a bull is a bull. So, and it's part of jiu-jitsu. You're going to get somebody who wants to go harder than you're willing to go. So what you have to do is keep yourself safe. You've got to make sure you don't give them your arm. You've got to make sure you don't leave your foot hanging out there because they're going to jump on that thing and crank it till it breaks, right? Like that is often the nature of somebody who just wants it way more than you. You do have to dig a bit deeper, but it's not to say you have to adopt their mentality, but you do have to match a degree of intensity to protect yourself. Yeah. Like in those moments when you're like, oh, I just can't. I've had a huge day. Kids been throwing up, people are sick. I'm not feeling the best. You're not sick, but you're just flat. And this person's coming to take your head off. You got to dig. You have to find a way. And it's not that you have to beat them. It's that you have to protect yourself. It's a form of self-preservation. And I've had that before where I've been totally outclassed. I'm a blue belt. I got a black belt world champion trying to just rip my arm off. I got to do everything in my power just not to not tap, like I'll get tapped, but not get injured. And I think that's the thing that it's not always the way that a mat hero is the injury machine, but sometimes they can be. And really, and this is the great thing about jiu-jitsu, as confronting as it is, it forces you into these situations where you're like, oh my goodness, this person's stronger than me, they're bigger than me, they're putting it on me.
Potentially technically better than you.
Technically better. I don't want this. You still have to do whatever's within your power to protect yourself, defend yourself of sorts. So it's not that you're trying to match them and you're trying to make it the World Championship final, but recognize those gym heroes or recognize when someone's coming in hot, you're going to have to pick up the pace.
Yeah, I also think that a large part of it is managing your own expectations.
Sure.
Because you might, like say in the example you gave a moment ago, like you're this belt and then the person who's putting it on you is like 2 belts higher. Mm. There's nothing you can do.
You're probably not going
to you might be, like let's just say they're stronger, they're better at jiu-jitsu, they're hungrier that night.
Mm. The survival is a win.
Yeah, and what you can control is your thought, like your expectations going into it.
Yep.
So I find for me, I get caught out a lot with lower belts where I just go into it without having, I don't really care, but I don't give them enough credit. Mm. And I'm like, let's do the roll thing. And then you're like, holy shit, this guy's putting it on me or this girl's putting it on me. And you're like, fuck, I'm in terrible positions. I'm behind. I'm like, fuck it. Like, and you're like, this person came in motivated and hungry.
They had something to prove.
Because they saw, they're like, I'm going to show this black belt like my A game. And I came into it thinking, what's this blue belt going to do?
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're like, holy shit, like I've made a huge mistake here.
Yeah.
And I always come out of those roles, and I'm sure you would too, really disappointed in myself because I'm like, because I'm usually more gassed than I should be.
I know what you mean. I match and mirror. It doesn't matter who I'm rolling. I'm rolling you. I'm rolling someone I never trained with before. I always try to spend the first minute just getting a feel like, where's this person at right now?
Yeah.
They try and like footlock me or heel hook me in the first 30 seconds. I'm like, that
okay. Kind of roll.
Oh, it's like that. Even if I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Even if I was like, I didn't come here for this. If you think that you might give me a knee reconstruction, I'm going to break you for that. I'm just, even if I haven't got the energy, I'm dehydrated, I'm not well fed, you think it's this kind of a role? That's not good etiquette, as far as I'm concerned. I always try and match and mirror. And that's the thing. If somebody is rolling a bit lighter and cruisy, I just try and go with that. I'm not going to be too brutal.
But let me finish that point because what's happened there is whereas I find if I'm like coming into this round and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm looking at so-and-so, I know that they're going to be bringing it tonight. And I'm like, okay, I'm not really in the mood for it. But what do I need to do? Well, I need to make sure that I don't let them get to X position. I need to make sure that my guard is tight. And so if I bring the proper intention to the role, then I can control it.
Correct.
Or it can just go more of how I expect it to go. And I'm like, well, I did my bit. So even if it's a higher belt, right? Even if I'm a blue belt and they're a black belt and I know they're going to put it on me, but I'm like, Joey, this is going to be a really tough round, but you just got to play your game. If I manage my expectations well, then it's okay. But then I find I come out of it, I'm like, well, that was great. But if I come into it loose without any kind of intention, that's where I find it really sort of grates on me. And that's the one where you like wake up in the morning and you're thinking about it.
Still churning.
Yeah, you go to the toilet at night thinking about it. You know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those things that I guess your perspective on it, Joe, is that you do have expectations. Some people don't. You know what I mean? Like some people don't even think about intention or anything else. They're like, I'm just showing up. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm here. That guy clearly knows more than me and buddy wants to take a piece of me home. And I'm not even there yet. You know what I mean? I barely know what a hip escape is. I feel that's where it gets tough. And it's not that it's bullying, but it's when you have the disadvantage, like the disparity in skill and power, and you clearly got someone who's better, who just wants to make everyone their comp round. That's kind of hard. You know, like some gyms don't have comp training. You know, we don't have comp training here, but some gyms do. They're like Thursday nights or Friday nights, all the comp people come and we smash it up. Or like some gyms have one session a day, which is for the pros. So, you know, all the killers are going to be there. The expectation is set. We're all going to try and murk each other. Let's go. Right? In the same way, if you have a beginner class or an introduction class, you know, there may not even be rolling or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think the difficulty is when you're someone who has no say. You have no say. You don't have the choice. You know what I mean? Like we talked about restaurants. You know, you are the restaurant.
For restaurants.
You have no chance.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea of intention is actually maybe a new thing for some people because they
absolutely.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
They're just getting bashed and they're like, why does that guy always bash me? What, do they not like me? And I think it's not even that personal. I think the one thing I've taken away from people who've really brutalized me, as much as I thought, they were mean to me because my jiu-jitsu was good or whatever, and I challenged them, it's more that it's the reflection of them. They feel the need to put it on everybody for them to feel like their jiu-jitsu is good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, I mean, but maybe what if they were just putting it on you? Maybe it wasn't, you know what I mean?
No.
You're like, they're doing this to everyone. No, they just could be coming for JT.
No. I'm talking about certain people who I had subsequently gone to say, Adam, like, what's with that guy? He just broke my wrist. What? Did I say something wrong? Like, what's going on with that guy?
Right, yeah.
He's like, nah, man, that's homo. He does that too. He's brutal. He hates the world. Oh, okay. All right, cool. I get that. Fair enough. I'll still steer clear of that guy. You know, I think that's tough.
So what about, tell me and I'm looking at this, like that's sort of one side of it. What about this concept of like people who train life and death in the gym but do never compete?
Why? I would ask the questions like, is it because there's people who do very well in the gym and then struggle in competition?
Yeah.
You know, they feel
competition is hard, right? Needless to say, like it's most of us don't get into the game because we want to compete. Most of us enjoy the training.
Yeah.
And then competition is like, fuck, that's really stressful.
Yeah.
And the majority of jiu-jitsu practitioners avoid it.
I think there's a degree of cowardice in that because when you go to competition, you can't control it. When you train in your home gym, you know everyone's game. You know, like if you've been there for a while, you're like, that guy's good at triangles. That guy plays barimbolos. She'll armbar me. Like, you know everyone. So there's a familiarity that allows you to manipulate the variables. Competition, it's all outside your control. Those people who feel the need to brutalize and then not get tested, not to have the opportunity to maybe lose, risk a bit themselves, I'd say that's a little bit cowardly, to be honest.
Yeah, right. So you're not saying people who avoid competition, but you're saying people that go.
No, you don't have to compete. Like
but you're saying people that go super hard at training and then avoid competition.
Yeah,
right.
That's a red flag on. They don't want to lose. They want to put it on others, but not have it put on them. They can give it, but they can't take it. I think what speaks a lot of character is the failure. Like someone who fights back from being down 10 points and pulls out a sub. They didn't give up. They fought to the end. That is absolutely at the heart of just keep trying. Just keep trying. Even if you lose, you just keep trying. Not, oh, I'm losing now, I give up kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. I've seen certain people who are really good at winning from the front. As soon as they get down on points or as soon as their submission doesn't work, they give up the ghost.
Yeah.
And this is just, and whatever. I'm a judgmental kind of human and I don't believe it. Try to reduce that, with all my Buddhist, studies. No, but it's a lack of character. You haven't been tested enough. If you've been tested enough, you know that everyone fails at some point and that's okay. You're not a bad person if you fail. And it's one of those things. Jiu-jitsu is going to test you and invariably at some point along the way you will fail. You'll learn from it and then you'll come back. The unfair thing is to see somebody who is good at jiu-jitsu put it on everyone, well, not everyone, maybe lower belts or whoever, and then maybe avoid hard rolls and then will not put themselves in a situation they can't control. That indicates a big flaw in their jiu-jitsu and the fact that they're insecure, they don't trust their skills. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think on sort of that point of training hard but not competing, I'm in no, I haven't competed at black belt and I competed once at brown, right? Probably would have competed a couple more times at brown had it not been for the knee injury, but really it's never been a huge focus for me. So I'm thinking about this question that was posed from our boy Adam, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with what you just said, wholeheartedly. But then I also see another side of it where, we do try to hold up competition as being an essential part of the journey of jiu-jitsu. But then I also think that it's yeah, it is. And I think that it's there and it's a really rich and deep experience for anyone that chooses to do that. But I also think the jiu-jitsu journey can also be taken without competition. It's maybe not as rich, maybe not experienced as fully, but when you look at it, it's a lot of people just enjoy engaging with this training process. Yeah. And if that's all they're going to do, then I'm like, okay, that's great.
I don't think you have to be a competitor to be good at jiu-jitsu, but I do believe you should do a couple of competitions in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? A lot of people out there are I'm not a competitor. Okay, that's cool. I think it's unreasonable to expect people to gravitate towards competition because it's so stressful. It is a stressful thing. You've got to be a bit of a weird human to really embrace that level of stress and how uncomfortable it is and all the process that goes behind it. It's just super taxing. That said, I have an expectation for anyone who I grade, they must compete at least once at that belt. They have to. They have to know what that is, right? At each point, even if they're not a competitor, I want to see them go through that process to understand where their skills are at, just to inform them. It's not really for me, it's for them.
Yeah.
The other side of that is when you get to black belt, it's a really high bar to entry. It's not I just show up. It's professional. You can't just wander in and go, yeah, I got my black belt. Look, I'm semi-retired. I train once or twice a week. You're going to go in against Ariel to back, and he's going to...
No, he's not in my weight division.
In the absolute, bro. And he's training...
Never do the absolute at black belt. Everyone knows that.
He's training 6 hours a day.
Also, never do masters because it's all the fucking cats that have been out there crushing it for the last 10 years.
What do we do? How do you enter, Joe?
You go adult, you go weight division, hopefully a little bit heavier like Big Joey. You're sweet.
Two guys.
But
what I'm saying is...
I would actually make a point, though. I don't know if it is different. Obviously, you do have those professionals.
I think it's different.
But sometimes you look at say if you go to a local comp here and you look at black belt division, you're like, oh... It's like when I went brown belt division, I was like, oh, fuck, man.
But we're not just talking Australia, man. We're talking worldwide. We're talking to people in America. You could go to a competition and it'll be big. Like Brazil.
They have competitions over there?
Oh, apparently they do.
Okay.
It's hard to know. I mean, I don't even know if it's real map. When we learn, no. Sorry, shout out to all our US listeners. But I mean, it's one of those things that when people say to me, oh, man, you're going to compete? I'm like, look, that's a great compliment. Thank you. I try to stay in shape. I am not trying. I don't train enough to step in at black belt. That's a joke. I respect other black belt competitors because I know what it takes to bang on that level. That's that ain't me right now. And I don't feel embarrassed to say that because I have other priorities. Like, I'm not going to pretend. Am I a hard roll? Maybe can I hang with a competitor? Maybe for a round or two. But if we train for an hour and a half or 2 hours, I'm gonna fuck out. You know, I know where my limit is. Could I train full time and become a black belt competitor? Yes. Is that a good idea for me at this stage in my life? No. You know, like, if I want to have a family, if I want to have a career.
Pussy.
Ha! No restaurants. I will still fight you to the death, Joe Worthington.
But you know, one thing I was kind of alluding to before is that like in jiu-jitsu, we almost kind of hold the training as a form of competition. And, you know, for whatever we say about like shouldn't, and it's the journey and it's about using that time to work on, you know, it's like still, you know, and you're like, when you're rolling with someone who's a counterpart,
sure,
you're like, motherfucker swept me last week, not this week. You know, or you're like, yeah, I got the better of that person, or you know, or you hear, maybe not in yourself, but you hear other people like
talk like,
oh, I trained at that guy's gym and I subbed him.
I tapped that guy.
Like I beat him in competition, and you're like, dude, it's training. But I've known like this to be the way that it's spoken about by my counterparts for many years.
People, sure.
Yeah, and I just, what I'm trying to get at is I think we're all a bit sort of guilty in the culture of kind of making the training a form of competition in many ways, because you do have exceptional individuals who are just like, like no ego, like no competition vibes from, I'm just here to train and get better. But most people are like, no, this matters a lot.
Sure. And particular roles matter more than others, right? I get that. I guess what I was going to say is when you're earlier in the journey, I feel like you have less option on that. When you get further in the journey and you get to blue belt, you're a good blue belt, or you get to purple, you can kind of, you have a bit more say in who you go hard against and who you don't. And you've got enough skill to be able to, you know, maybe control somebody so a white belt isn't as challenging. When you're a new white belt, everyone's you're just doing whatever you can. So I think relevant to the idea of mat heroics, that if you're someone who's been on the wrong end of that and you're constantly getting obliterated by this person who wants to go 1,000% and you do not, then this can be a communication thing too. You can either, I'm not saying you should avoid them. If you can't find it in yourself to be able to hang there, then maybe you need to be able to let them know that's not what I want to do, or talk to your coach. On the other end, if you find like everybody doesn't want to roll with you, maybe you are the mat hero. Like, and maybe that's holding your jiu-jitsu back in the way that,
if you're keeping a scorecard in between,
I got the list, Joe.
Tapped, swept JT today.
16 points nil.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a good day.
But look, hey, maybe you're the next world champion and that's the way you view it. But I think in terms of not being the mat hero and being someone who doesn't have that inclination, there has to be ways for you to overcome that. And sometimes that requires you to dig pretty deep to survive. And then other times that might be you saying, hey, no, I don't want that smoke. I think it's okay to do that.
Yeah. I think, where I'm trying to, like, in trying to find like a practical take, I think there's a lot of practical takeaways in this chat, right? Which is like, yeah, if you're on the receiving end, then try to go into it knowing it's going to be tough, but try to find a way to protect yourself. Don't get damaged. Like that's the goal.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're not getting obliterated, but you're like, fuck, I'm finding myself getting real scrappy. Then it's like, okay, go in with more intention, like have more of a plan. Give the person that you're training with the respect that you know they're going to be bringing it. So turn it on, to not let it go to that place. But I do find it interesting. Like I'm trying to poke at like the culture and what is it that we truly value? Because I like I said, I do think we're all a bit guilty of that, of making the training room like the place of heroism.
Well, I think we can circle back and go look at Brazilian culture, and it's casca grossa, like the thick skin, the tough skin, and showing heart. Like that is a big part of Brazilian culture, whether you do, soccer, football, or you do capoeira or anything, passion, intensity. That's a big part of that culture. If you have a Brazilian coach, they may be pushing you to be like, porrada, like show your heart, like this is your opportunity, be tough. And that's difficult if that's not something you've grown up with. You know what I mean? If you haven't come from adversity, you don't have these challenges, you're not trying to conquer the world, you're like, man, I just want that second stripe. Bro, I just want to have a second latte.
When are we doing the acai trip?
So it's difficult, but then you might have a really chill coach who's like, oh man, like I'm Jeff Glover, even though Jeff Glover is a complete savage and has been amazing, very inspiring with his jiu-jitsu. He's the kind of guy who's going to roll a couple of blunts and get super high and just, kind of do some rolling, do some breakdancing, go surfing. He's a chill guy. Like he rolls incredibly, but he's a totally different mind state on what makes jiu-jitsu successful. Even though he had a very tough Brazilian coach who beat the hell out of him, he believes in training hard, but he is also like a very mellow cat.
Right.
I think the coach and the coach's expectation does inform your own. So if you've got a more chill coach, you might be a more chill human. Does that make sense? I think that...
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I think that,
even look at Adam, right?
I think there's a micro culture, which is like, like the culture you're in at your academy.
Yeah.
But then potentially there's like the macro culture, which is like the jiu-jitsu community.
Right.
And I would say that, I do, there is different micro cultures from gym to gym, and you definitely have those gyms that are just like, it's not that competitive. Maybe for us, when we go there, you're like, oh, it was a pretty gentle session. And then you got those ones where it's just on, grappling education or absolute, right, where you came from. Even Alliance, Adam, like very, very, very thick skin kind of approach to jits. I like the way you put that. But I do think that on the whole, like looking at the macro, that it's the jiu-jitsu thing is like, no, like we're here to win.
You think mat heroism is a byproduct of jiu-jitsu culture?
Yeah, I think it's
in general
endemic.
Whoa. 10-point word score.
Turn that into a fucking soundbite, Jules. I do think it's a part of it, and it's and I think that there's so many good things that come from that. I don't think it's all negative at all.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about with the ego, it's like, no, bring a bit of that. But, I think that there's, like anything, there's a dosage and there's limits. Like there's a sweet spot where it's like, a little bit of that is good, but also be smart. Sometimes take a rest round. Like, know your body, guys.
I don't think you have to.
You know what I mean? Like, you agree with me, right? You guys, sorry, nodded. He agrees, right?
See me shaking my head. See how Joey conflated those two things? Yeah. He got me in a soft spot where like I'm going with it. I'm nodding like, Joey's leading me down the garden fucking path. And he's like, rest rounds.
Rest rounds like jumps out like, surprise.
Okay. I guess we're doing this.
No,
we're not.
But like it's a point where, like a little bit of it's good, but it's like, hey man, like you're not, you're 35 years old or you're 42 years old. Like you got a full-time job. You got to be up in the morning. Like you are not like living and dying by your sword on these mats.
You are not the Andrew
It is not about that.
Yeah.
Sure. For 15 minutes on a Wednesday, a lighter session on Monday and Friday, like you can, like that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. It allows you to do that.
To tap in.
But I think to go too hard and overdose on that aspect of the culture, that is, I believe, problematic. And, potentially maybe what our boy who kind of raised the idea is like, well, when you're dealing with people who are, because I think everyone can acknowledge, that is a part of it. But potentially he's like, hey, when you're dealing with people who are that all the time, like that's fucked.
It's too much. It's too much. And I think also I actually don't, not that I excuse it, but if I see someone who's ultra intense, but I know that they want to be a world champion and that's their life's focus. Well, okay. That, I get where they're coming. I understand it better if that person is at every competition, they're saving up money, they're a gym rat, they're doing everything they can to be the best at jiu-jitsu. I know that takes another level of intensity. And at one stage, I was that guy. I just wanted to beat everyone, never lose a round, whatever. But that's because my dream was to be a world champion and I was competing as much as I could. So in that way, I understand it. But if you are brutalizing everyone and you don't want to compete,
and no one wants to go out for acai with you after training,
we got to ask some questions.
Yeah, then you're not being cool.
Yeah, definitely not. Cool, man.
Guys, thank you for listening. If you want help with your strength and mobility training, we got you. This is what we do. We have an online program. We have multiple different programs that you can follow that are going to build you a bulletproof body. Strength and mobility specifically for jiu-jitsu athletes or jiu-jitsu hobbyists, right?
Yep.
And it's all designed around minimal amount of time spent in the gym for maximal returns, and so that you can prioritize being on the mats, doing the thing you love, which is jiu-jitsu. You can sign up for a free trial, and if you use the code BJJ podcast, you'll get 20% off your subscription, which starts after the trial. Go to bulletproofforbjj.com and check that out. You'll see JT and I on the inside there. If you've got any questions, hit us up. And also, if you're digging these podcast episodes and you want to watch us, all the episodes are on YouTube. So jump over to our YouTube channel, search for us. You'll find us there. Subscribe to the channel, catch the episodes. And thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.
Valeu.